As Brett said, welcome. I'm glad that you're here. We're going to continue in our series as he talked about this idea of young, restless, or both. And today I think we're talking about something that is so specific to each of us that we've all been in that place, that tension-filled place where we didn't know whether or not we belonged. And belonging is something that we all long and desire to be. We all want to belong to something or to someone, to have people that we can call our own. People that, as we said, know us by name. And belonging is not something new. Belonging is something that we have wanted from the beginning of time. And it is still true today, to belong. And it's so interesting to me within the culture that we live in, when we think of the idea of belonging to something, usually we identify what we belong with by titles. Well, I'm a pastor. I belong to the church. I'm a husband. I belong to my family. I'm a father. I belong to my kids. I'm a best friend. I belong to my friends. But sometimes belonging means more than just that. To belong and to understand what it really means for you and I to be a part of something. Something that radically shifts and changes our lives in such a way that it makes us different, or it makes us want to be different. We live in a culture today that it's all about swiping right. And if you know what I'm talking about, maybe you've actually used the dating app, maybe you haven't, I don't know. But you swipe right to the things that you like, and then you swipe left when you don't like something. And we've actually adopted that in our culture with everything else. Well, I don't like that. Stay away from me. I don't like what you say or who you are or the way that you act or the way that you look or the way that you portray yourself. So I'm just going to swipe left, or I'm going to cancel you out of my life. But we all long to be loved and accepted for who we are, the way that we are, the way that we were created, the things that we desire and long for. We hope that people will just like us for who we are. That they won't simply pass judgment on me because of where I've been or what I've done or what my life has looked like. But that I would just simply be accepted, to belong. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because we've been on both sides of the fence, at least I have. At least I'll be honest about being on both sides of the fence. I've been on the side of the fence where I've cast judgment on someone because they didn't act like me or look like me or think like me or believe like me. But I've also been on the other side of the fence where people have cast judgment on me because I didn't look like them, I didn't act like them, I didn't think like them, I didn't believe like them. We all know what it's like. We've all been there. And so today, my hope and what I want to accomplish is that for you and I, that we would actually shift the way that we think and believe so that it moves us in such a way that we will act different and be different in the world where we live every single day. See, I have sitting here today a table. And for most of us, we know what the table represents. I mean, for me and for my family, when it comes to the table, it's a place where we like to eat. It's a place where we like to sit down with one another to talk about our day, to talk about life. I love it at night when my family sits down for dinner and we have the opportunity to ask our boys, well, how was your day? And if you got teenagers, you know exactly what the answer was. Fine. Well, elaborate. Tell me what fine means. It was fine. How was school? Fine. What'd you do? Work. I know, but what kind of work? What made it so fine? I don't know, it's just another day. But then there's those rare occasions, those moments where they open up like a book. And they can't wait to tell you about what's going on in their life. Dad, you'll never believe what happened today. It caught me so off guard, I didn't expect it. But I'm glad I got to experience it. Or those moments of disappointment. Dad, I tried really hard. It just didn't turn out the way that I'd hoped. I felt pressure like I'd never felt before. People said things that I thought people shouldn't say, but they said it and it hurt deeply. But the table's also been a place for my family where we like to play games. Yeah, my kid was one of those that graduated this week, and we've had family and friends over at our house all week. We've been entertaining, and there's been a lot of games played at our table. There was a lot of yelling going on last night about who's winning and who's losing, and who's cleaning up after the game's over. But there's something that we learn about each other when we sit at the table. I remember when my wife and I started dating, and I went to her family's house for dinner. And I was caught a little off guard because of the conversations that they were willing to have at the table. Conversations that my family didn't have. I mean, for me and for my family, and maybe your family looked like mine, it was, survive, figure it out. There's something in the fridge. I hope that you can make something work. It seemed like that was a lot of nights. There were rare occasions where we actually got to sit down at the table as a family, or some of us sat at the table and some sat in the living room. Or some sat at the breakfast table and some sat at the dining room. But when I started dating my wife, it was totally different. There was something about them and gathering every single night at the table and the conversations that they would have. I can remember looking across the table at my now wife going, "Are you kidding me? You guys talk about that?" There's no way that we would talk about that at our table. But there's something about the table that causes you and me to allow our guards to be down. There's something that allows us to open up and to share what's really going on inside of us. I mean, we have those places. It's like when somebody comes to my house and I open the door, and it depends on whether I know them or not that I allow them to actually come into my house. And if I know and I'm comfortable with them, they come in. And for some, they come in and we stand and we talk and then they leave. And for others, they actually get to sit on the couch and we talk and we have great moments. But yet, when we move from the couch to the table, something different happens. It changes everything for us. Paul talks about in Romans chapter 1 that we belong. And when he talks about the belonging that we have, he's talking about the fact that you and I belong to him, that we were created for him and by him for a purpose. And when we begin to understand that purpose, our belonging begins to take on a whole different significance, where it radically shifts and changes our lives. In Genesis 1:26, it says, "Then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." He created us. He created all of mankind, all of humanity, that there's not them and us, that he created all of us, those who know Christ and those who don't. He created us. And he created us for a purpose. But he created us understanding who we are and what he hopes for us. To belong. To know that I'm loved and accepted for who I am. That I won't immediately be judged the moment that I walk into a room of people that I don't know. Or even better yet, people that I do know that know me intimately. That I can have confidence to know that they won't talk behind my back and tear me down. But they value the relationship that I have with them because they understand who I am, because of whose I am. We talked about that last week, and the fact that our identity is created in Christ alone. And if you weren't here and you didn't hear that message, I want to encourage you, go to our website, go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, follow, listen to that message to understand your identity. Because of who we are, we can have confidence because of whose we are. Listen to what Paul wrote in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10. "For we are God's handiwork." Maybe your translation says masterpiece. We were created in Christ Jesus to do what? Good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. God knew who we were going to be and what we were going to do with our lives. He planned it out, that he has a future and a purpose. Again, if you didn't hear those previous messages, go back and listen to everything within this series. It applies to all of us, no matter where we are on the spectrum of life. It applies to us. See, his motivation from the very beginning was simple: to bring us back to himself. His motivation was to bring us back to himself. And it's so simple for us that we've said our mission here at Mountain Ridge is to bring people back to God, because that is his desire. His desire is for you and for me to sit at the table with him, to be open, to be honest, to be transparent, to hold nothing back. The table is a place where I can let my guard down. My kids can tell me when they're upset or when they're frustrated, or my wife is disappointed in me. It's a place where I can share about my dreams and my goals and my desires for life, and know that my family will champion me on and accept me and push me to actually accomplish those things. There's just something about the table that begins to open up a floodgate of love. And to begin to understand that love, go back and read 1 John chapter 4:19. And if his love is real in you and it's real in me, in John chapter 13, verse 35, it says, they will know that you are my disciples. They will know that you are followers of Jesus, not by how smart you are, not by how much money you give, or how good you look, or how great of a job you have, or how put together your family is. But it says that they will know that you are my disciples by the way that you love. By the way that you love. See, belonging is about creating a space that allows you to be authentic and vulnerable. I know that when my family and I sit at the table, I don't have to worry. I don't have to worry about what they're going to think or what they're going to say. And sometimes we say hard things to one another at the table. Things that at times I don't want to hear, but I need to hear. You know what I'm talking about, right? And if you don't have a table like that, I encourage you, begin to create a space like that so that you can be vulnerable, so that you can be authentic, so you can be your real self. Stop putting on the mask or the facade of who you think you have to be, and actually begin to be who you've been created to be. Be real. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. I'm so glad that I've been able and willing to share my failures with my kids. That I didn't create this fictitious life about how everything's perfect and everything is going to work out. That everything that I ever hoped to have or to dream to be, that I'm going to become it, and I should have it. If I just work hard enough, if I make just enough money, if I get the right job, I could have everything that I ever want. But what happens when I don't? And there's been a lot of don'ts. But I can be authentic and vulnerable. So what does that mean for you and for me? To be authentic, to be vulnerable, to be real, to be transparent, to be open, to be who you were created to be. If you have your Bibles, I want to encourage you to turn to Luke chapter 19. We're going to start in verse 1, and you may be familiar with this story. It's a story about a man named Zacchaeus. And every time I think of Zacchaeus, all I can think about is the little nursery song. Zacchaeus was a wee little man. He was a wee little man. Sorry, you don't want me to sing that. But there's just something unique about this interaction between Zacchaeus and Jesus. What we know about Zacchaeus is he was a short man. He wasn't tall. And what we know about that time when Jesus was going around from town to town, and when people found out that Jesus was coming to their town, what did they do? They all came out. They wanted to see him. I mean, they had been hearing for days or for weeks or for months the things that Jesus had been doing. Did you hear? He changed water into wine. How did he do that? Did you hear about the blind man? He'd been blind from birth and somehow now he could see? Or did you hear about the guy that was a paralytic that now walks? He jumps around, he runs. He plays games with his friends out in the field. Did you hear about that? I mean, I'm sure there was something within Zacchaeus that created this curiosity of, I got to see this. But there was a problem. He couldn't see over the crowd. He just couldn't see. Everybody else was taller. There were too many of them. I mean, you've been in that type of crowd, right? I was in that type of crowd this last Tuesday at graduation. It was like, really? Wow, there's a lot of people here. I've got space issues. Give me a little bit of space. But this was Zacchaeus. He was going to do whatever he could to see this guy Jesus that he'd been hearing about. But there was also something else about Zacchaeus. He was despised. He was hated. Nobody wanted anything to do with Zacchaeus except for the people that could profit off of him, or profit, better yet, with him. But there was a determination in him. Jesus is coming and I want to see him. Listen to what it says starting in verse 1. Jesus, he entered Jericho, and when passing through, a man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector, and he was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and he climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and he said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. So he came down at once and he welcomed him gladly. I just want to stop for just a moment. I mean, again, just imagine what was happening. Put yourself in that situation. Maybe you're the crowd, maybe you're Zacchaeus. And you see all of this going down, and here comes Jesus doing what Jesus does. He sees the people. I'm sure everyone is fighting for his attention. And Zacchaeus just wanted to get a look at him. It wasn't like he was trying to rush the crowd and break his way through the crowd to get to Jesus. He just wanted to see him. I'm sure he never anticipated that Jesus would actually notice him or actually call him out. But he did. He looked up and he saw him in the tree and he said, Zacchaeus, get down. But what happens next, I think, is the pivotal changing point of this story. Because not only did he ask Zacchaeus to come down out of the tree, he said, Zacchaeus, come down, let's go to your house and let's eat. Let's have a meal together. Let's sit at the table together with one another. I'm sure the crowd didn't expect that, anticipate that whatsoever. And then when he did ask him to get down and go to his house, the response. And maybe you've been in that kind of situation where you've invited somebody to your house and people said, why are you inviting them? Do you know who they are? Do you know where they've been? Do you know what they've done? Or better yet, maybe it's somebody that's hurt you so deeply that you thought that there was no way that you could ever forgive them. You could never let go of the hurt or the pain or the shame that they brought upon you. There's no way that you would ever invite them to the table. That's how people felt about Zacchaeus. That guy, he's been robbing from us. That guy sits up there in his nice fancy house, driving his nice fancy car with his fancy clothes, having all the big parties, doing all the great things. He's the one that's on Instagram that everybody wants his life. That guy, he's got everything, and he took it from us. Why would you invite him to have a meal with you? And that's exactly how they responded. Look at what it says in verse 7. And all the people saw this, and they began to mutter. They began to grumble. They began to complain. He's gone to be the guest of a sinner. He's going to go sit with him at his house, at his table, and break bread with him. But Zacchaeus, he stood up and he said to the Lord, look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I've cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to the house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. I can only imagine the conversation at the table between Jesus and Zacchaeus. I mean, to get to that place where he was willing to share about his life, to be vulnerable. Should I really tell Jesus where I've been, what I've done? What's he gonna think when I tell him about the people that I've hurt, the people that I've stolen from? What's he gonna say? What's he gonna do? And I'm really not worthy to sit at the same table as Jesus. There's so many people that are better that should have my seat. But there and in that moment, in that dialogue between the two of them, there was a level of trust that was built. And trust, it's built when we're willing to share more about our journey. And I'm sure that's exactly where Zacchaeus got to the place where he began to share more about his journey so that he could ultimately get to that place where he would say, you know what? Jesus, I've shown you my true colors. I've given you the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's something about coming into our homes and sitting at our tables. People get to see the real us. The veneer's gone. The mask is off. The tension must have been thick in the room, in the crowd. The crowd was probably still watching the whole thing transpire. And he had to begin to just open up and share his heart and his life with Jesus. Jesus, last week you won't believe what I did. Last month, last year, for the last 20 years. I don't know. But he began to share about his own journey, and because he was willing to share, his response was not the normal response of the culture. His response wasn't about, Jesus, give to me. Jesus, do this for me. Jesus, 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 Jesus. I need this. Save me from this. Save me from that. Do this for me. Give me this. No. His response, because he began to share his story and began to open up his life, was, you know what? If I've hurt anyone, all that I've taken from them, I'm going to give it back to them. I'm not just going to give it back to them. I'm going to give it 4 times what I took. And in there, and in that moment, there was this relationship that was built between Jesus and Zacchaeus. All because they were willing to sit at a table. All because Jesus in that moment was willing to invite Zacchaeus to the table. The same way that he invites you and me to the table. See, if you want to belong, our first belonging starts with him. It starts with us knowing that we belong to Jesus. And that Jesus, the reason that he came, the reason that he died on the cross for you and for me is exactly what he said in the last verse. I came to seek and to save the lost. I came to seek and to save those who are separated from God. I came for them. I came to die on the cross so that they could experience life, so that they can know that they can belong back to God. Because you and I are his sons and his daughters. But belonging is even deeper than that. If we know that we belong to Jesus, then what does that mean for you and for me? It means that we begin to invite people to the table. See, the chairs around our table aren't meant to be empty. Have you ever gone to lunch by yourself? I like Hot Bagel up here on 67th. They didn't pay me, so this is this is free advertisement. You should go, it's really good. Breakfast and lunch, that's all they do, but it's really good. I've gone in there so many times, and I've sat at tables by myself so many times that it's moved me to actually get to know the staff. And then lo and behold, what do I discover? That one of them's a neighbor that lives a couple of houses down. But I was sitting at the table by myself. And my problem is I'm a people person. And it's hard to sit at the table by yourself when you're a people person. But what I discovered was this, and you learn this from this story, is that the best relationships, they start with empathy. They start with empathy. They start with me having a concern for someone else, thinking less about myself and thinking more about others. I mean, again, Zacchaeus, all he wanted to do was see Jesus. But Jesus understood that because he cared for Zacchaeus and he understood where Zacchaeus was, he invited him to the table. The same way that he invited you and I to the table, the same way that he wants us to invite people to the table. There's something interesting about belonging. What we tend to do when it comes to belonging is we wait for somebody to invite us. If you want to belong, it starts with you inviting. I know that's countercultural. That's not the way our culture works. I have to wait to be invited in, to be accepted. No, start inviting. Don't wait for others. If you want to belong, start inviting people into your life. Be vulnerable with them. Be authentic with them. Share your story with them. Share life with them. Show empathy and concern for somebody else. Don't let it be just about you. Begin to accept people for who they are and where they are. Don't begin to place on them expectations of how you think they should live their life. Paul wrote in Romans 15:7, accept one another then, just as Christ accepted you in order to bring praise to God. If you want to see people brought back to God, accept them for who they are. You don't have to change anyone. You just simply have to love them for who they are. Even if they disagree with you politically, even if they have a different approach financially, even if their goals and their dreams and their aspirations look totally different than yours, even if they root for a different sports team like the Yankees. Sorry, Brett. Go Rangers. Yeah, we're not very good, but it's okay. But there's just something about sitting at the table and inviting people into your life and you entering into their life. See, my experience is that the more I take initiative to cultivate community for others, the more I feel like that I belong with those people. When I take the initiative. Jesus didn't wait around. He went and he invited people in. And you and I, we have tables that we sit at every single day that we need to invite people in. And I got to be honest, if I'm going to be totally transparent, at times, for me, because of past hurts that I've experienced or that my family's experienced, it can be hard to invite people into the table. What if they hurt me? What if what I tell them about my life, they don't accept? And they start judging me for who I am. I mean, when they find out about my past, I mean, to be honest, to be a pastor, I thought I was totally unqualified. The places that I've been, the things that I've done, the life that I've lived, the things that I've been through. A guy like me shouldn't be a pastor. I'm broken. I'm messed up. I fall all the time and feel like it's impossible to get up. So to be honest and allow people to sit at the table, it's hard. It's not easy. But what it means is that I just simply have to get past myself. Because it's never been about me. It's always been about Jesus. The moment that I make it about me and my needs and my wants, that's when I miss out on belonging and feeling like I have a place that I can call mine. These are my people. They get me. They accept me for who I am and where I've been. When they find out what's in my closet, they don't run for the hills. They don't cast shame and hurt on me. They accept me and they walk with me. They don't look down on me and say that they're better than me, but they accept me. And they make me feel like I belong. I don't know where you are. I don't know what's going on in your life right now. But you and I, we sit at tables every day, whether it's your dinner table, whether it's at the lunch table with colleagues or friends, whether it's in the office, at the table there in the lunchroom, or whether you go out to lunch. Maybe it's the people that you have coffee with. You sit around a table. I don't know who you need to invite to the table. But if you're like me, I think there's people that probably immediately come to your mind. That you think, you know what? I need to invite them to the table. I don't know them that well. We don't really have a relationship. We have a lot of things that are at odds with one another, but we do have some common threads. Or better yet, maybe it's nobody that you actually even know, but somehow you continue to run into them. You see them at the grocery store. Maybe you see them here at church. Maybe you see them at your kid's school or on the ball field. And you just need to invite them to the table to get to know them and allow them to actually get to know you. Again, I don't know where you're at, but I encourage you. Invite somebody to the table. Will you pray with me?